Great to be here with you today. I'm the Reverend David Wiggs, Senior Pastor at the Boston Avenue United Methodist Church, and with us today is the Reverend Dr. Sam Powers. He's the incoming Senior Pastor for Boston Avenue. We're delighted to have you with us, Sam. Thanks so much for coming over.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here, and it's good to be back at Boston Avenue.
Well, we are so excited about your coming. You have roots here at Boston Avenue, so tell us a little bit about how you were first connected to Boston Avenue.
We came to Boston Avenue in 1976. Bishop Russell was the pastor at the time here, and we had a connection with Biship Russell's son John. My brother Bob went to high school with him, and so they would sit up in the balcony together, and we'd sit up there a lot of the time, and just really came to love it. We were actually from the Assembly of God, which is kind of a big jump to United Methodism as far as denominations go, and I didn't really know the difference at the time all that much, although there was not a lot of speaking in tongues at Boston Avenue, which was one of the bigger differences.
Still true today.
Yeah, exactly. So when I was older, as a pastor, I knew the difference, and I'd asked my parents, why did you go to Boston Avenue? I said, there's other United Methodist churches that might have been more charismatic, more, a little bit closer to Assembly of God, and they said, we just appreciated the quiet and the reverence of the sanctuary and the worship, and they just said that just spoke to us. That's what we needed, and they were there till they died. So
right,
yeah. So it was really helpful, and this is where I grew up.
Yeah.
So,
well, and they were active choir members for decades, and became very active here while you were growing up here.
Yes, Eldon and Betty Powers. They were in the home builders class and in the choir for many years.
Yeah, I remember them fondly.
Yes.
So you went through your teenage years here. Often teenagers are trying to sort out their values and their vocation, and you discerned a call to ministry somewhere in all there. Tell us about that.
I would say that my call to ministry happened as kind of as a punctuated marks throughout my life, really. And I didn't know, I'd say, when I was a teenager that I wanted to go in the ministry. So I never thought about like, oh, I'm going to be the pastor here, someday or anything like that. That never really occurred to me. I did ask Lucinda Sheldorf about that. She was my youth minister when I grew up here. On Facebook, I said, did you ever see me as the pastor here? She said no. Right. So I don't think anybody saw that coming, but some of the things they provided for me here, some of the opportunities certainly led me towards that. I would say the LIT program here, the leadership and training that I did, working with Nafee Ranch, the summer camps, the various things they had, VBS, all the things we did as junior high kids.
You began to volunteer to be a leader in those settings.
Yes, and I found that just kind of grew for me. One year I was helping with the Nafee Ranch, and we did the fires out there for the meals, and it rained, and so it was going to be hard getting the fire started. I borrowed a blowtorch and took it out and lit all the fires, the campfires, with that blowtorch out there. I was like, nothing happened, nothing bad happened. It was a great experience. I mean, it was great, but it's like, who does that kind of thing? But it just, the fact that the adults there trusted me to be able to handle that, I think, spoke in ways at the time I didn't understand, but it gave me a sense of value and purpose, and say that, hey, you can help, and then we're going to trust you to help and do the right thing.
Right.
Do the right thing. So I think that was helpful. And then going on, leading in 6th grade camp, I led at a very young age. Kids at 6th grade, they don't let you do that anymore at Safe Sanctuary, probably wisely, but I did start out very young, and Virginia Gray was very instrumental in kind of moving forward that. I mentioned Charles Herndon was the dean at the time. That's Eva Marie's father, that's here on staff, and so I so appreciate him giving me that opportunity and serving in that way. And I think those kind of experiences helped me realize when it came time to look at career and things like that, wow, ministry really is what you can do.
Right. And during college, you applied to work in the summer leadership program here, the venture leadership team. You did that for several years. Did that help you discern your call?
It did. And I was 87, 88, and worked together with some great teams those summers. And I think worked with you
first summer,
the 88 summer, and had a good time with that as you came on as the youth minister during that time. And the church is still standing from those years, so I think that was really good. But that really helped me understand what it is to work in a church, to see all the goings on, and they had us doing a lot of different things in those days as a VLT, and it was really helpful.
Right. And coming out of college, you actually took a ministry position at a church. Tell us a little bit about that first ministry experience you had in a full-time kind of setting.
Yeah, so that was, I was in college and I was trying to figure out what to do, and that's part of my call experience, that I was trying to figure out, am I being called to ministry? I didn't want to preach every week because I thought that sounded like writing a speech and giving it every week, which I didn't know that sounded like something I'd want to do. And so I said, I was kind of doing this bargaining with God kind of thing, I said, God, if you really want me to work in a church, I've done this youth ministry stuff as interns before, internships like at Boston Avenue. I said, I think I could, maybe I'll be a youth minister and try that out and see if the church is for me. Right after I prayed that prayer, I got a call from Lynn Tegler, who's, member here for years, and she and I worked together on staff as interns and the BLTs together, and she said New Haven in Tulsa called me and asked me if I wanted to apply for their position. She said, I don't want to be a youth minister, and so I hope you don't mind I gave them your name. So I was like, okay. And I thought, okay, God, I think you're telling me something here. And so that was part of my calling too, and I worked there for 4 years as youth minister, and during that time, Eva Marie and I worked together as the co-district coordinators. Back then it was the Tulsa district, the youth coordinators, and we did dean camp together and those kind of things. Had a great time. It was really good.
And then from that job you went back to school, went to seminary at one of our United Methodist seminaries.
Yes, I went to Candler School of Theology, which is at Emory in Atlanta, and was there a couple of years and came back after graduation. Cheryl, my wife, she got her MBA at the University of Georgia out there, so we spent some time in Atlanta, some time in Athens, and really loved it out there. But when we graduated, we were ready to come home, and all our family's here in Oklahoma.
She's from Oklahoma as well.
She's from Duncan, Oklahoma, is where she grew up, and so yeah, we got lots of family here.
Right.
So we're happy.
So you worked with youth. You've worked a lot in camping. I know you've continued to go to summer camp even as you've become a senior pastor and a superintendent. Tell us a little bit more about why most pastors don't continue to go to camp, but you've been committed to that.
Yeah, camp was really where I got my call, or solidified my call as well, and that was such an important part of how I came to faith and how I saw faith as moving and becoming real for me, that I wanted to support it as a pastor. And I can remember having really good conversations as a teenager with pastors that would take the time to go.
Right.
And so I just thought I wanted to commit to do that and to be a part of that. And so I've done that every year since, and haven't missed a year of United Methodist camping in 40 years, something like that. So I've been doing it a long time. Started as a teenager, and anyway, it's been fruitful for me to do, in the sense that I'm able to engage with youth, young people, and have at least some sense of understanding, how things are changing for them, how culture is changing, how it's shifting, and that helps me. When you exegete a sermon, we also exegete the congregation, and if there's young people in the congregation, we need to be speaking to them as well with how we present the message, and so that's just been helpful.
Right. So we worked hard here to continue to have an intergenerational church with all ages. Clearly you have a commitment to youth and young adults. We know culturally young adults are staying away from church in record numbers. Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about kind of how you think about reaching out to youth and young adults and helping them connect with the church today.
Yeah, I think that relationship is key, and having relationship with young people is important. And my kids are both young adults, so that's helpful in the sense of being able to talk to their friends and kind of sense that. A lot of their friends don't go to church or not a part of the church, and so having conversations around that to find out what's missing there, I think, is helpful. I really believe that as United Methodists, our Wesleyan theology is really going to be key to reaching people that are unchurched, especially young people. The idea of prevenient grace speaks to me, and that's the idea that God is reaching out to us before we even know it, and reaches all people, and is trying to reach all people through us, through lots of means. And so when we see someone who's unchurched, instead of saying, well, you need what I have, to say to a young person, well, here's how I see God working in your life, or here's how I see you being Christ-like in your life, and those kind of things. Here's how I see Christ in you. And that's a whole different situation. And I saw a billboard the other day that said, repent, 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 and then it said, call this number. And it's like, I don't know who that's speaking to, but that's not how I've ever been. I don't think that's the way we want to be. I think that it's a much more positive thing to talk about the grace that is present, and to say, here's the grace I see present in your life and how I see you working through that. And I think that speaks to people, because I think all people are spiritual people, and I think they just need an outlet that's not going to be too judgmental for them and come down on them for who they are.
So clearly you have a kind of a compassion as well as a passion for bringing people into the church and helping particularly young adults and youth figure out a way they can be faithful and integrate faith with their life. You've served in the camping ministry, but I also know over your career you've served very small churches, medium-sized, larger churches. Now you're coming to a very large church. How do you see your role and kind of your personal call and mission fitting into the role of senior pastor at a place like Boston Avenue?
Yeah, I think so many of the places that I've been, the key for me has been to be relational with people, and I don't think it really matters what size of church you're in. That's still going to be a key, is to be relational. Obviously, the larger the setting, it does become a little bit more difficult to be accessible to people. But I've always been, fairly transparent, even as a superintendent, where people, if they want to get a hold of me, I'm readily accessible to them to do that and to share with them. And as I think about reaching out and reaching Tulsa through Boston Avenue, I think we've got a great opportunity here. This church is such a great witness just for who they are, but also as I've been, beginning to follow again, what's going on here and seeing all the great ministries you've got going on. There's nothing I need to necessarily do to start or invent here or shift in a different direction. I just have to be, get on board and find out what is really working and what we really love to do together, and just emphasize that.
Right.
And just begin to point that out. And if we can point those kind of things out to the community at large, I think that's what we need to do. I think people will be excited about that.
You've grown worship attendance at other churches where you've served. Is that maybe the strategy you've used, like being able to amplify what we're doing in a way that's accessible to people, or is there more to it than that?
I think some of the churches, especially the very smaller churches, we started a lot of programs because there weren't things going on.
Okay.
But as the churches that I've served got larger, obviously they were already engaged in things, and so emphasizing what we do is just helpful, and recognizing people for where they are in ministry as laity is helpful. I think reaching younger families, one of the ways we've done that is really through confirmation programs, where we heavily emphasize that, but not only the kids that are kind of in our church, but also that are tangent to us through all of our various ministries. If there's a family, we invite them to be a part of that and really let them know about it. And one of the things that's also been successful about that is we've started adult classes as well for the parents. So they both go through classes. They're taught in different settings.
Right.
but they're both taught the same material basically, and so we've emphasized that this is a kind of a relearning for the adults, and for some it's the first time for them to go through. So
Sure.
we've actually had adults then make professions of faith as well at that confirmation service and join the church who haven't been a part of it, and so that's been, I'd say, really instrumental. Just the emphasis on education, which I know Boston Avenue also already has a great emphasis on education, so this would just complement that, I think, in doing some of those kind of things.
Right.
Yeah.
So in terms of our worship here, we're kind of known in the city and the region because we do broadcast on television and haven't online streaming since COVID and those kind of things. We have a traditional liturgical style worship. You grew up in that, and obviously being here. But in terms of your preaching style and sort of more modern services, we've also started an alternative worship service. Just tell us a little bit about how you think about worship and your role in that as the preaching pastor.
Yeah, so growing up here, I'm very used to liturgical worship. I'm very used to following the lectionary, the church calendar cycle. That's always how I've emphasized even the smallest churches. That's what I did. I've always preached in a robe, those kind of things. And emphasizing that, I think good lectionary work for me is to really kind of bring that home to what season we're in the church. But the liturgy of the church is really the work of the people, and I really value that in the sense that I think that the liturgy should work with the sermon theme, work with the music to all emphasize different points of the same theme and kind of bring it home for people. So that's one of the things I really enjoy doing. I've always had success with traditional liturgical worship with the choir and organ, those kinds of things. I mean, that's who I've always been at all my churches. They've all grown that way, and I think that people are hungry for that still. A lot of times the idea is that, you go to a band and get away from this other.
Right.
And for me, even the more contemporary services we've started at these other churches that I've been at have still been liturgical in the sense we still use liturgy and things like that. The style was different, but we still made it a liturgical service, and so that was kind of our emphasis. It kind of set us apart, made us different than some of the others, and I think that's helpful.